In the forgotten corners of Willow Creek, where the maples whispered secrets to the wind and the river carved lazy paths through rusted iron bridges, life moved at the pace of well-worn tires. It was a town of faded glories, once a hub for lumber barons and their gleaming automobiles, now reduced to dusty main streets lined with boarded-up shops and pickup trucks coughing black smoke. At the edge of it all stood Harlan's garage, a squat building with walls the color of storm clouds, its sign creaking like an old man's joints. Harlan Reeves, the man who'd hung that sign 30 years ago, was no stranger to the town's slow decay. At 45, he was a fixture as enduring as the oaks that shaded his lot, broad-shouldered, with calloused hands that told stories of engines tamed and dreams deferred. Harlan had come to Willow Creek as a boy, orphaned and wide-eyed, after a factory fire in Pittsburgh claimed his parents. He'd apprenticed under old Mr. Grady, learning the poetry of pistons and the rhythm of wrenches before the man passed the garage to him with nothing but a deed and a warning. Fix what's broken, boy, but don't expect the world to thank you. Harlan never had. He fixed farmers' tractors that limped through harvest seasons, restored jalopies for teenagers chasing Saturday nights, and nursed the occasional luxury sedan back to health for out-of-towners who never stayed. His life was a quiet liturgy of grease and grit, punctuated by evenings alone with a thermos of black coffee and the hum of a transistor radio playing big band tunes from his father's era. Romance. That was for storybooks. Wealth. A cruel joke in a town where the mill's whistle hadn't blown since '89. That ordinary Tuesday dawned humid and heavy, the kind of heat that clung to your skin like regret. Harlan was elbow-deep in the guts of a '72 Ford pickup, its owner, a grizzled rancher named Tom Wilkins, leaning against the workbench, chewing on a toothpick. "She's sputterin' like my ex-wife after too much gin," Tom grumbled, wiping sweat from his forehead. Harlan grunted in agreement, twisting a stubborn spark plug free. "Give her a day. I'll have her purrin' like a kitten." His hands, blackened with oil that no amount of lava soap could fully erase, moved with the precision of a surgeon. At 6'2", he dwarfed the truck's engine bay, but there was a gentleness to his work, a reverence for the machines that had carried souls through life's rough roads. The crunch of gravel under tires pulled Harlan's gaze upward. A sleek black Escalade towed a flatbed trailer into the lot, kicking up dust devils that danced like mischievous spirits. Tom straightened, squinting. Fancy wheels. Must be lost. But they weren't lost. The trailer groaned to a halt, revealing its cargo, a 1940 Rolls-Royce Phantom III, a ghost from an era of silk gloves and champagne flutes. Its silver Phantom grille was tarnished, its coachwork, once a symphony of polished aluminum and burled walnut, now pitted with rust and scarred by decades of neglect. The hood ornament, a spirit of ecstasy, hung crooked, as if weary from flight. To most, it was a corpse. To Harlan, it was a siren call, whispering of ballrooms and boardrooms long faded. Two women emerged from the Escalade. The elder, Mrs. Eleanor Hargrove, was a vision of imperious elegance, tall, with silver-streaked hair pinned in a chignon that defied the humidity, clad in a cream linen suit that screamed bespoke Savile Row. Diamonds glinted at her throat and wrists, catching the sun like captured stars. At 62, she was the widow of industrialist Reginald Hargrove, whose steel empire had built half the bridges in the Midwest. Now, she ruled Hargrove Enterprises from a penthouse in Chicago, her word law in boardrooms and ballrooms alike. Her daughter, Amelia, 28 and the spitting image of her mother's youth, hovered a step behind. Amelia's auburn hair fell in loose waves, her simple sundress a rebellion against the family's tailored armor. Her green eyes held a quiet storm, curiosity laced with the exhaustion of a life scripted by expectation. Harlan wiped his hands on a rag that had seen better days, standing taller as Eleanor's gaze pinned him like a butterfly to corkboard. Tom muttered something about city folk, and slipped away, leaving Harlan to face the intrusion alone. The air thickened, charged with the scent of expensive perfume clashing against motor oil. Mrs. Hargrove's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her ice-blue eyes. "Mr. Reeves, I presume. The man who fixes anything." Her voice was cultured, clipped, the vowels polished at finishing schools. She gestured to the rolls with a manicured hand, as if unveiling a disappointing exhibit. "This is my late husband's pride. A 1940 Phantom III, imported from Crewe. It carried us through the war years, weddings, christenings, even a midnight escape from a tiresome gala. But the engine seized in '52, after a cross-country drive. My experts in Detroit say it's unsalvageable. Rusted internals, warped block, a miracle it didn't explode on the highway. She paused, her eyes raking over Harlan's faded flannel shirt and scarred knuckles. Yet whispers from this charming town suggest you might disagree. Harlan met her stare, unflinching. He'd faced worse judgments, from bank loans denied, from dates who saw grease under his nails and fled. Whispers travel fast here, he said evenly. What's the job? Eleanor's smile sharpened. The job is resurrection. Bring it back to life, fully operational, as it was in its prime. And if you succeed, she glanced at Amelia, whose cheeks flushed pink. You may prove yourself worthy of more than just this relic. Amelia's breath hitched. Mother, please. This is absurd. Her voice was soft, laced with the lilt of Ivy League debates, but it trembled. She'd always been the dutiful daughter, groomed for a merger marriage to some hedge fund prince, but lately, cracks had formed. Late nights reading Kerouac in her lakeside cottage, volunteering at the local shelter, small acts of defiance against the gilded cage. Eleanor silenced her with a raised palm, her authority absolute. It's not a request, darling. It's a test. Mr. Reeves claims mastery over machines. Let's see if that extends to destiny. To Harlan, she added, 1 month. Fail, and you're just another dreamer polishing hubcaps. Succeed, and perhaps my daughter won't have to settle for the mediocrity her suitors offer. The words landed like a wrench to the gut. Harlan's jaw tightened. He wasn't blind to Amelia's beauty, the way her eyes softened when they met his, holding a flicker of something real amid the farce. But this, a challenge wrapped in condescension, dangling a woman's future like a carrot before a mule. Still, the roles called to him, its silence a plea. Cars weren't just metal to Harlan, they were vessels of memory, hearts that beat with the pulse of their owners. This one had stories etched in its frame, Reginald's triumphs, Eleanor's veiled sorrows. He couldn't let it rust into oblivion. I'll take it, he said, voice low as gravel. But not for your test. For the car. Eleanor's nod was regal, a queen conceding checkmate. Amelia's gaze lingered on Harlan a beat too long, apology in her eyes, intrigue in the curve of her lips, before she followed her mother back to the Escalade. As they drove off, tires humming over the gravel, Harlan turned to the Rolls. He popped the hood, the hinges protesting like old bones. Beneath lay a chaos of corrosion, the V12 engine, a 7.3-liter behemoth, entombed in decades of grime. What have they done to you? He murmured, tracing a finger along the manifold. That night, under a single fluorescent bulb buzzing like a trapped hornet, Harlan began. He stripped the peripherals first, carburetors caked in varnish, fuel lines brittle as autumn leaves. Tools clattered, a socket set worn from 1,000 battles, a torch that flickered blew promise. Hours blurred into dawn, his back screaming, but sleep was a luxury for the unburdened. By morning, blisters bloomed on his palms, and the first skeptics arrived. Old Mrs. Landry, the baker with a tongue sharper than her rye, peered through the open bay door. Heard you took on the witch's folly, Harlan. That Hargrove woman's toy, even God couldn't fix that heap. Her laugh cackled like dry leaves. Harlan didn't look up from his workbench, where he'd laid out the disassembled ignition like a surgeon's tray. God's busy, ma'am. This is man's work. Word spread like creek water after rain. By noon, a knot of townsfolk gathered, Tom Wilkins with his toothpick, young Mikey from the diner nursing a coffee, even grizzled Pete the millwright, who'd lost his leg to a bandsaw in '95. Fool's errand, Pete spat, eyeing the Rolls. Engine's deader than my Bertha. And for what? That high society game. You're beneath her, Harlan. Always will be. The barb stung, dredging up ghosts. The girl from high school who'd laughed at his patched jeans, the bank officer who'd denied his expansion loan with a smirk. Harlan's father had taught him resilience over the dinner table, grease-stained stories of immigrant grit. They'll doubt you till you drive it home, son. He shoved the taunts down, channeling them into the wrench. Twist, tighten, test. The engine's block yielded grudgingly, bolts fusing like welded lies, but Harlan improvised, a vinegar soak for rust, a custom jig from scrap lumber. By week's end, he'd freed the pistons, their rings scored but salvageable. Progress, inch by agonizing inch. Amelia's first visit came unannounced, on a Thursday sweltered in gold. Harlan was mid-weld, sparks flying like fireflies, when her shadow fell across the bay. She held a wicker basket, steam rising from cloth-wrapped cornbread and pulled pork, comfort food from the town she'd summered in as a child, before boarding schools whisked her away. "I thought you might be hungry," she said, voice tentative, cheeks blooming rose. Up close, she was even more arresting, freckles dusting her nose like cinnamon, eyes the green of new leaves. Harlan straightened, wiping sweat from his brow with a forearm that left a streak of grime. "Ma'am, I ain't much for picnics in a grease pit." "Amelia," she corrected, setting the basket down. "And it's not a picnic. It's fuel." She watched him work then, perching on a stool by the door, her sundress pooling like spilled sunlight. No questions at first, just silence broken by the clink of tools. But as the afternoon waned, words slipped out. "Mother's always testing. Me, the staff, now you." It's her way of controlling the chaos. Harlan paused, sanding a gasket. "Chaos. Looks like order from where I stand. Big house, bigger accounts." She laughed, soft and genuine, a sound like rain on tin. "Order's a cage, Harlan. I've spent my life fitting the key. But you build your own locks." Her gaze traced the scars on his hands, not with pity, but wonder. "Tell me about the garage. How'd you end up here?" He hesitated. Stories were for whiskey nights, not strangers. But her eyes held no judgment, only hunger for truth. So he told her, halting at first, the fire that stole his parents, Grady's gruff mentorship, the endless repairs that paid just enough to keep the lights on. "Cars don't judge," he finished, torquing a bolt. "They just need will to run." Amelia stayed till dusk, her presence a balm against the ache in his shoulders. When she left, she pressed a napkin-scribbled number into his palm. "For progress reports. Or, whatever." Her fingers brushed his, electric as a live wire. The visits became ritual. Tuesdays brought lemonade, tart with lemon, and her quiet questions about his dreams, ones he'd buried under oil pans. Fridays, she'd arrive with books, Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath, dog-eared, her annotations in the margins. "For the road warriors," she'd say, and they'd talk as he rebuilt the cooling system, water pump groaning back to function under his coaxing. She shared fragments of her world, Eleanor's iron-fisted widowhood, the suitor in New York who proposed with a prenup thicker than a Bible. "He's safe," she confessed one evening, as Harlan flushed the radiator lines. But safe isn't alive. Harlan felt the pull, dangerous as a riptide. He'd never chased status, women came and went, mistaking his steadiness for stagnation. But Amelia saw deeper, her admiration fanning embers he thought long cold. Yet doubt gnawed. She was sunlight, he was shadow. What right had he to her orbit? The town noticed. Whispers turned to wagers at the feed and seed, odds on the engine firing, on Harlan, stealing a kiss from the heiress. Pete cornered him one dawn, as Harlan rebuilt the timing gears meshing like reluctant lovers. "You're playin' with fire, boy. Hargrove'll bury you. Stick to what you know, fixin' what's broke, not dreamin' of what's not yours." Harlan's hammer paused mid-swing. "And what's broke about me, Pete?" "The hands. The address." Anger simmered, rare for him. "I've fixed worse than engines. Fixed myself after losin' everything. This." He nodded at the rolls, half disassembled, its innards splayed like a vivisected beast. "This is just steel." Weeks bled into a mosaic of labor. Harlan dug deeper, honing cylinders scarred by time, machining new valves from billet aluminum scavenged from a junkyard mercury. Sleepless nights yielded to fevered sketches, diagrams of fuel injection mods to honor the original's dignity. Blisters burst and reformed, his reflection in the oil drum showed hollow cheeks, eyes burning with feverish focus. The rolls transformed, fenders buffed to mirror sheen, leather seats stitched with thread begged from the upholsterer. It wasn't just repair, it was resurrection, each turn of the flywheel a defiance of entropy. Amelia's support deepened. One storm-lashed night, thunder rattling the rafters, she arrived soaked, clutching a thermos of soup. "Couldn't sleep. Worried about you." They sheltered under the workbench as rain drummed the roof, her head on his shoulder, sharing stories till lightning cracked the sky. "You're not like them," she whispered, tracing his jaw. "You see the soul in things." Their first kiss came tentative, salt-tang from tears she didn't shed, his hands cupping her face with the care of handling nitro. It was a spark in the dark, igniting what words couldn't. But dawn brought reality. Eleanor's shadow loomed, the deadline a guillotine blade. The final push was hell. The crankshaft, warped from thermal stress, fought like a cornered wolf. Harlan heated it red hot, pounding with a sledge till his arms screamed mutiny. Reassembly was symphony and torture, timing chain tension, spark plugs gapped to a hair's breadth. By the 30th day, as harvest moon rose fat and orange, the rolls stood whole, tires inflated, paint gleaming under fresh wax, engine bay a shrine of polished brass and oiled steel. Harlan slid into the driver's seat, the leather creaking like old bones settling. Amelia waited by the door, her dress the color of twilight, eyes wide with held breath. The key turned with a click that echoed fate. Silence. Stretched, eternal as doubt. Then, a cough, a sputter, a roar. The V-12 thundered to life, a bass growl rising to operatic howl, vibrations humming through the chassis like a lover's sigh. Exhaust purred blue, the spirit of ecstasy straightening as if awakened. Tears stung Harlan's eyes, not for victory, but release. The garage shook, outside, townsfolk flooded in, jaws slack, murmurs swelling to cheers. Tom whooped, clapping Harlan's back, even Pete nodded gruff respect. Damn if you ain't a wizard. Amelia rushed forward, flinging arms around him as the engine idled proud. You did it, she breathed, lips brushing his ear. You brought it back. Brought us back. Eleanor arrived last, stepping from her Escalade like a dowager queen surveying a battlefield. Her eyes, sharp as ever, widened at the spectacle, the Rolls alive, its headlamps casting golden pools. The crowd parted, she approached slowly, heels clicking judgment. For a heartbeat, arrogance flickered, dismissal ready on her tongue. But the engine's steady pulse, Harlan's unbowed stance, Amelia's radiant defiance, they eroded her walls. Impossible, she murmured, almost to herself. Then, softer, perhaps I underestimated you, Mr. Reeves. This isn't just a car. It's proof. The word cost her, pride cracking like thin ice. She inclined her head, a concession vast as empires. You've earned more than my blessing. Harlan stepped from the car, engine thrumming beneath him like a second heart. The crowd hushed as he spoke, voice steady as forged iron. I didn't do this for blessings or bets. Engines die, same as dreams. But they deserve fightin' for, a second chance to roar. And folks, we do too. Rich, poor, don't matter. It's the will that turns the key. The words rippled out, striking chords. Amelia's tears fell free, her hand finding his, not as prize, but partner. In his eyes, she saw her own unspoken rebellion validated, love not as transaction, but triumph. Eleanor watched, expression thawing to something like regret, a mother glimpsing the daughter she'd nearly lost to her own fears. The town erupted, claps, hoots, someone popping a beer. But for Harlan, the world narrowed to Amelia's smile, the Rolls' hum a vow. He didn't need wealth's chains, he'd forged his own path, from orphan's ashes to this phoenix roar. As dusk painted the sky in fire and indigo, Harlan fired up the Phantom, Amelia beside him. They drove slow through Willow Creek, the engine singing of second lives. The garage receded, but its lessons lingered. Some destinies aren't inherited, they're rebuilt, bolt by bolt, with hands that refuse to let go. And in the rearview, Eleanor watched them fade, the Rolls not a relic, but a bridge to what she'd almost broken. From that night, Willow Creek changed. Harlan's garage became legend, drawing restorers from afar. He and Amelia built a life of quiet fire, wetting in the lot under strung lights, her sketches of engines beside his tools. Eleanor visited, grudgingly at first, then with stories of Reginald's own humble starts. The Rolls. It carried them on honeymoons and harvests, a chrome testament that history isn't buried, it's revived. In the end, it wasn't just a car reborn. It was a man, a woman, a town, all roaring back to life, proving that destiny favors the persistent, the kind-hearted, the ones who turn wrenches and whispers into thunder.